and you always ask your guests this sort of at the end. You ask them, what would, you know, if somebody wanted to help you, like, what would you tell them to know that, you were really suffering and that you really had, that you needed help. And my question to you is like, what does somebody who loves somebody who's struggling with this, what, because it's not even that we don't know. It's could be pretty obvious at a certain point. The difficult thing is trying to figure out what to say or what to do. What can somebody say, or even what you've done that you would have heard and you would have maybe not waited until, because the truth matter is you stopped drinking, yes, because you made that decision, but that decision was also made for you. And so it got to that point where you didn't have autonomy over that decision as much as you could have if you had stopped drinking in earlier years or months or whatever. So what, if anything, can, yeah, a loved one do?
Um,
Because I never did it successfully. It always ended in a fight.
no, and to be honest, I do ask this question of a lot of people, and I don't think there is any right answer to this question. And I don't think there's any wrong answer to this question. I think it's just a matter of like having a conversation, right? So what I think is it's really hard to create a space that people feel safe in when you are also in a position where you feel like you have to protect yourself from that person. And I think that the challenge, that I found myself in, and I think the challenge that a lot of people find themselves in, which is why they're oftentimes like, and I was always so defensive because I never felt safe. And it's really hard to create that environment. But I think that,
Well, then I hear that too, and I'm like, that implied in what you're saying is that I didn't make you feel emotionally safe. So what and there, or what didn't I do to make you feel emotionally safe enough to receive my genuine concern?
well, I think that, that it's less about the environment that you created, and it's more about the environment that I was willing to open my eyes to. And which is why oftentimes people talk about, it's not, it's never going to be a circumstance where someone's going to step into recovery unless they're willing to do it for themselves. And yes, to your point, I decided to do it one day, and you would say that my hand was forced to a point where I had to. But there are many people who would have drank through that last moment that was defining for me, but but still maybe for some wouldn't have been considered a rock bottom. You know what I mean? That's how people like lose everything.
Well, yeah,
So
that's what I mean
so
in terms of your hand being forced on that, where you would have lost.
and that would have been a horrible story to have to look back on. Hopefully, I would have been in a position to look back on my life and recognize that. But I don't know. I don't. I think it's a really hard thing to ask someone else to do for someone who's struggling, like unless they're in a place where they're willing to get some help. And for me, like that moment in September where I clearly caused you emotional harm, physically, was more aggressive than I have ever been. Like, said things in front of the kids that I wasn't proud of. Like, I could take those things back, but I could make a commitment for it to never happen again, right?
Yeah.
Because you guys are important to me. And but I think that like unless I got to a place where I recognized that that's what I wanted for myself, there's nothing much you could have done.